Good evening, Bahamas, and welcome once again to Share Your Story, a show brought to you by Palmdale Vision Center in Nassau, Bahamas. And this has been an exciting year, bringing guests to you who are who are sharing their stories and relating their stories concerning the different diseases, the different challenges. And so this evening, we are going to discuss a very important disease that is very common here in the Bahamas and even worldwide. And it's something that we hardly talked about in the past, but it is impacting so many individuals, so many lives, so many families. So we thought it was important to discuss this disease, to talk about it, to bring persons on who will talk about their journey as caregivers, and even another lady who's going to tell us her role in all of this. I want to say that the show today is going to be the last show for 2021, and what an exciting year it has been. The show has started 2 years ago. It was only started for 1 month, and now we're into 2 years. So we will continue to see how long we will go. As long as the issues and challenges are there, we will invite persons on to just share and discuss. And so this evening, I want to welcome you to this episode. It's on Alzheimer's, and we will be discussing this disease, getting information, and also sharing information to you. And I have some special guests in studio this evening. I'm waiting for one to come in, but hopefully she will be in a few minutes. And I want to say thank you to Theodore Sr., Theodore Jr., and others who have helped to make this show a success over the years. So good evening, Bahamas, and good evening to the world. And I want to say welcome to Share Your Story. And so we will bring our guest in studio at this time. Ladies, good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Good
I want to
evening.
say welcome to Share Your Story. Last show for 2021. My, what a year it has been. When you
Good to be
guys
here.
are involved in another interesting disease condition that affects so many here in our country and even worldwide. And so it's a pleasure to have you all in. And we're still waiting on one more guest who will come in soon to talk about this debilitating disease called Alzheimer's. And so I'm going to start with the president of the association here in the Bahamas. I want her to introduce herself and to let the folks out there know who is Wendy Poitier Albury.
Good evening. Good evening, Dr. Ebby, and good evening to your guest. And I'm so happy to be here with you this evening. I am the president of the Bahamas Alzheimer's Association. The Alzheimer's Association is just celebrated its first anniversary as a registered nonprofit NGO with the government of the Bahamas. And we were also happy to celebrate not only our first birthday, but also in September, able to celebrate World Alzheimer's Month. And of course, on the 21st of September, to celebrate World Alzheimer's Day. The Alzheimer's Association, one of the goals, of course, of the Alzheimer's Association, or the main goal, is to bring awareness of the disease to the Bahamian community and also to provide assistance and advocacy and education for persons who have not only dementia but Alzheimer's, because we know that Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. And so we are here to try to advocate and also to by giving information to help to reduce that stigma associated with the disease and surrounding the condition, and also to assist to those persons who are caregivers. So we are encompassing a whole lot of things, but that is what the Alzheimer's Association is all about.
Okay, so we will come back to you to talk
Mhm.
more on that. And I want to let the second guest introduce herself. And she is classmate, colleague of mine, and it is none other than Deirdre Clark. And so, Deirdre,
Good
welcome.
evening. It is my pleasure to be here. I am a daughter of Charles and Lorraine Clark. Lorraine Clark being the person to whom I am the caregiver. In fact, I'm the caregiver to both my mother and my father, but my mother is more in need of care than my father is. She having been diagnosed with Alzheimer's about in around 2012. So I'm the primary caregiver for Lorraine, and it is my pleasure being her primary caregiver, actually. I take
Okay,
joy in having that designation.
okay. And then my colleague, Dr. Anita Dane. Good evening to you, and welcome to this exciting show. Share your story, and please introduce, let us know who you are if we don't know who you are already.
Yes, I am Dr. Anita Dean. Um, I am an optometrist just like Dr. Jackson. I have my own practice. I I was one of the caregivers of my mother, um, Agatha Victoria Brown. She is now deceased. Um, but my sister, she had two children, myself and my sister, Erica Atkins. And my sister was actually the primary caregiver along with my father because I was away in school. And I came back towards the end of my mother's journey through Alzheimer's. The last 3 years I got to spend with her before she was deceased, before she deceased. Yeah.
Okay, so we will get into the stories as time goes on, but I want to go back to Wendy. Now, Wendy, let's just let the audience know what is Alzheimer's because it's considered a part of a group of diseases, and we know a lot of people in the past used to say people are doubting
Right.
because we didn't talk about it back then. This person was just doubting, and you wonder what doubting was. And then we said a lot of people have senility, like going senile.
Hmm.
But could you give our audience what definition you all are using for Alzheimer's?
And of course, I'm not a medical
No,
practitioner, and
no.
so I'm giving to you the layman's and just the
Yes.
information that, of course, that we have. But we know that dementia, that is the term that is used to describe the different brain disorders, and Alzheimer's is one of the major. It is the leading cause of these brain disorders of the dementia. Early symptoms of dementia can include memory loss, difficulty performing familiar tasks, problem with language, and changes in personality. These are the things we know the literature has told us. And there's currently no cure for dementia, but a range of support is available for people with dementia and their carers. And so, one of the things that we want to also encourage is for persons to go in and to get the checkups from their medical practitioner, to go in and get those checks early as possible. And so they can get the type of screening where you would be able to have early diagnosis, because if you're able to have that early diagnosis, they have medication not to cure but to assist with maybe slowing down the progression of the disease. And so we try to encourage persons to go ahead and get that test. And while, of course, persons say, well, if they're getting older, while aging is not necessarily a factor or one of the causes of it, sorry, but we know that that can be a factor in the bringing on. So we know we have that aging population, and so we want to try to ensure that we people know about what is happening. People are aware, families are aware, so that they can make better decisions for their family members or the individual themselves. They can make better decisions as they know, because we have no cure. but they know that they're as it progresses, that certain things and certain decisions will have been made, and for the better, for their quality of life.
And it's also related to buildup of protein on the brain cells, because that is what affects
Yes,
the functioning of these cells, and they start to die, and so it affects,
right,
so many different aspects of the brain, and then memory loss, as you've said, and a few other things.
right.
Now let's go to Deidre. Deidre, how was your mother diagnosed, or when she was, and how did you all know that something was happening?
Okay, around 2010, um, my mother was just doing some strange things. She would park, she loved shopping. So oftentimes she would go to the Marathon Mall. And my niece always joke, I know when Grammy got dementia because they were in the mall. And after they left the mall, mommy couldn't find a car. The security had to take us through every row, and
Deidre, don't say that, please, because I remember one time I was in Aventura Mall and I couldn't remember where I parked. So
no,
had that
no. Well, listen,
I
yeah,
couldn't find the car. I could not. I was lost.
but that was Aventura Mall. But this is the mall my mom frequents almost every day of her life. She was in Marathon Mall. Okay, so and it so often said this particular day she couldn't find the car, so the security take her to every row, and it was my niece who identified the car. Oh, see the car here. You understand me? So things like that was happening. And then in 2012, my sister, um, I was graduating from IMLI, International Maritime Law Institute in Malta. So my sister and my mother traveled to Malta to experience my graduation. When my mother got to Malta, this is after traveling for like over 12 hours. My mother came off the flight and said, so when the boat going back? Listen here, she was disoriented badly. She got to my,
How old was she at that point?
she was 72. She got to my apartment and then promptly said, listen here, when is Francis coming to get me? Because I don't plan on spending the night with you. So this went on for a whole week because she was in Malta with me for a whole week. And but I can tell you that night, I had to go in my secret closet and cry. I cried. So and then another experience after the week of being in Malta, she got used to me. She didn't know who I was too. And she got used to me and acclimatized to the whole situation and everything. And then we went to London. And my sister and I, she was a self sort of like, right? So we figured we could leave her in the hotel room so we could go to Marks and Spencer to do some shopping, right? When we got back to the hotel, my mom had the hotel in uproar. She was barefoot in the lobby, saying, they locked me in the room and gone about their business. Listen, yeah. The whole hotel was up in uproar. So anyway, I was too embarrassed because all my classmates were there saying, oh my God, look at you going on, lock her mommy up in the room and gone shopping. Well, anyway, so all these things spurred on the onset of her dementia. So when I got back home, I took her to Dr. Remy and we did some tests. And there was the onset of trying to get treatment and everything for my mother. My mother was a former director of social services, deputy director of social services. So she was a smart, intelligent woman, you understand me? But that disease took hold of her and it just made her, for what, a different person. Like my aunt said, this is not your mother, this is the disease. Because I used to get angry. I was like, Mommy, I just finished telling you that. Mommy, why are you doing this? I used to get angry with my mom, thinking that all this was intentional. Until my aunt said to me, Dee, this is not your mother. Do not get angry at her. And after that, my whole outlook on this disease and my mother and her doing what she did changed. I started to love her even more so than before.
Okay, we'll get back. Now, Wendy, question I have. Why did you become involved with the association?
I initially became involved too, like Deidre. I was a caregiver for first my mother-in-law, and then after she passed away, then my father-in-law, and both of them were living with us at the time. And so that is how I really became involved. And it was just by happenstance. I actually, with the sorority that I'm a part of, we had a program dealing with Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's awareness, and I was the chairperson of that program. And we had a forum, and we had persons who came to the forum, and as a result of that, I met some other people who were also experiencing some of the same things that I was experiencing. And we just got together afterwards and, just started to converse and bounce things off each other to help each other. And it was, after a while, we said, you know what, we need to now start the association. There was attempts previously. We had people like Sheila Pritchard and Nurse Marsha McQueen. She's deceased now, but persons like those who had already started to form and to get together. And then we have people like Paulette Davis and of course Deidre too, and Denise.
Yes, I am a part of the
Yeah, she's a
association.
part of the association as well. And so, we just started to get together and we said, hey, we need to form this association. We need to get things off the ground. And that is how we, got the ball rolling. So we
Now,
thank those people who were the founding members, I would say, or who were the impetus to put this together. I must say kudos to people like Sheila and to Paulette Davis as well. She's done a yeoman's task in ensuring that we got off the ground.
what sort of things you saw with your in-laws?
Well, my what happened to with my mother-in-law? She had actually had a stroke, and so that kind of brought on the disease. The onset of it, because they say, of course, when you have the strokes and brain damage, that is also part of it, bringing it on. And so, she would forget things, and she was also what they call a wanderer. That means that, when she got out, she would go walking. At one time somebody came and they brought her this, where they used to live before in Centerville, and somebody picked her up on the road, and they said, where are you going? And she said she was going home. And of course she was far away from, where the home was. So those are the types of things. So she was wandering, and we had to deal with her, making sure that, she was safe in the home, having to ensure that the doors were locked, doors were closed, gates were locked, so that she didn't get out. And then with my father-in-law, he liked to drive, and he won't be on his own. He's independent. And one time he got somewhere and he just was completely lost. He didn't know where he was. And it's fortunate, we still have some people who are here who are caring. And the gentleman went over to him and he said, what you doing here? And he said, I don't know. I'm trying to find my way. He had his cell phone, and the gentleman called and said, I have this man here. And we were able to go and pick him up and collect him. So that was when I guess you saw little things before, but that is when it really hits you that, hey, something isn't right here. He wasn't able to find his way back home. He just parked on the side of the road. And so after that, we saw the progression and things going on, and the forgetfulness. And then, of course, with the later stage where they're not ambulatory, they're not able to move, that type of thing. And you need to have actual persons coming in and taking care of them. And we were fortunate to have, some good caregivers, and then family members, his nephews, coming in to assist as well with that.
Now, when I met Dr. Bain, she had just returned from school, and she and I met downtown, and her mom came to pick her up. And that was when I met her mom for the first time. And I'm thinking she may have been in her 50s at that point. And then shortly thereafter, Dr. Dane told me their life, her life had changed. So I want Dr. Dane to share, what happened when you were in college, what was Erica saying to you, and then when you returned home, what did you observe and notice?
Yeah, my story is way ahead of both the persons that are on to today. Um, it was probably like in 1991, the year before I graduated from optometry school. I think I remembered calling mommy from school and asking her for a recipe. And my mother is a very good cook. And she always used to get excited about sharing recipes or whatever. But this particular time, I remembered her. I asked her, how do you do this, mommy? And the response to everything I said was, And I'm like, mommy, I'm calling you to find out what to do. I don't know, but
Mhm.
So at that point, I think I kind of threw it off. I said, maybe she was preoccupied or something. And I said, is everything okay? She was like, yes, everything's okay. I said, well, you may sound like you're a little tired or whatever. I said, make sure you're taking your vitamins and doing what you're supposed to do.
Now, question: at that point, did Erica say anything to you concerning?
No,
Okay.
none of them said. My dad didn't say anything to me. They held it back. And when I came home that Christmas, usually dinner is prepared, and my mother knows I love like lemon meringue pie. She would have a pie inside the fridge. So I walked in the house waiting,
No
excited
pie.
for all my things, and nothing was prepared. And I said, Mommy, what's going on? And she was like, oh, I got caught up with stuff. And she says, I'm going to try do everything now. And what clicked to me, she started washing fish with dishwashing detergent, like Joy. And I was like, what are you doing, mommy? And she's like, I'm cleaning the fish. And I'm like, okay. So that's when I went to my dad and I said, Daddy, what is going on? This is not mommy. And he then started to open up, and Erica started to open up and say, yeah, this like mommy was a musician in church. And he said he remembered, well, things were happening in church. She would start playing in one key and then switching to another key, and that was another thing. And then he said like she would go to the grocery store and then just buy one item, like 10 of one item. Like she would remember she had to buy black pepper and buy 10 containers of black pepper. So that Christmas was the time that I said, okay, we need to try and find out what's going on. And of course we took her to her doctor,
How
who
old was she at that point?
early 60s. I mean, she was
Mhm.
like, yeah. Um, so her doctor was Dr. Ritchie, late Dr. Ritchie. And of course, she was diagnosed at that point with Alzheimer's. And that was fairly new in our society at that point.
Mhm.
I had
Mhm.
never heard about Alzheimer's. Um, and I remember trying to find out, I did all the research and trying to find out if there was, because I know it's a lot of times related to families. So I tried to find out who in the family had it. Couldn't figure out anybody in our family that had it. It wasn't until later on, years later, that my uncle in Crooked Island said, yeah, mommy's, your grandmother used to wonder. And they just thought it at that point was, all, dementia, like, seizure.
Senility. Yeah, Dalton.
Exactly. So they just threw it out. And then after that, I started to see like cousins on the Moss's side that started to have it, and some of her siblings started to have it. But because mommy was so young in terms of the diagnosis early, she actually went through all the stages, the wandering, the short term memory loss. She was unable to communicate. She unable to walk at one point, unable to talk. She actually couldn't swallow at one point, so we had to put a feeding tube in her. And at the very end, she was unable, with difficulty with breathing. I mean, all the bowel issues and everything. So she went through literally every single stage of Alzheimer's. And it was about, it took 12 years. She was battling it for 12 years. Um,
She
so
actually outlived her husband, by the way.
yes,
And
yes, and the fact about it is, throughout it, we kept, like, when I decided to come home, when she hit 70, I said, God promised 70, and she reached that 70th year. I said, I don't think she's going to reach 80. So I said, let me see if I can come home and spend time with her for the last couple of years. Um, and I mean, like I said, Erica, all of us, we never talked down to her. Like, we knew that it wasn't her, but we knew her spirit was still inside. So we would still come to her and tell her about our day, what was going on. I remember when I was pregnant, I said, Mommy, look at me, look at me. And all she could say is, your belly big. So that was the only thing I got from her. But even when people came around, you could kind of see, like, when people from church came around and they would sing, you could see little sparks of light in her eyes. So you knew that she was in there somewhere, but she couldn't respond the way she was able to respond. And even when my dad died and we told her, she groaned that whole day. So she knew something. So somewhere inside there in the body, she was there. But the body, like they said, the sun comes down, or the sun setting, or sundowning.
The sundowning, yeah, that's it.
That's what
Hmm.
we saw. We saw it all the way to the very end. Yeah.
Hmm.
now let's talk a bit about how it impacts your life. Okay, Deidre, you started noticing the difference, so you had to become the caregiver for your mom. How did
Mhm.
that impact the home in terms of changes you would have had to make, changes in your lifestyle, any changes in your diet, those sorts of things? Let's talk about that because it impacts your life. I mean, for some, it's going to involve full time care. Um, you have to monitor them constantly because, yes, some of them do wander, so you get to a point where you say, well, you can't drive anymore, you can't cook anymore, you stove. So let's talk a bit about that. What are some of the changes that impacted you all, Deidre, in your home?
Okay, before I even get into that, I just want to go back to something Anita had said, that you can see that they're in their eyes, that they're somewhere, they're conscious, even though they're not um, can communicate with you. We had this conversation on the Alzheimer's Association chat group just, I think, yesterday or this morning. I can't remember which one, but we were talking about how sadness exudes through people's eyes. And one of the things I try to do when I get home is to talk to my mother. I make sure I communicate with her, whether she's understands me or not. I go and I touch her up, I kiss her, I hug her and stuff like that, right? To try and make her realize this, I am here for you. Oftentimes people may not do that. And I see like a sadness in her eyes. And I would say, when I see that sadness, I try to go and do something to make her feel alive. And I want to encourage people to always interact with persons in situations like that, because, like Anita said, they're in there. It's just that their mental capacity right now have them doing things contrary to what we're used to. Okay, go back to how it has changed my life. Well, I've always been an active person, always. And since having become the caregiver of Lorraine Clark, um, I find that I don't, even though I'm still active, my life is now work, home, church, home, work, home. And I thank God for a lot of these virtual meetings, even though it's tiring sometimes, because now I get to do a whole lot that I would want to do. Um, my um, my how my life has changed.
And your surroundings. What have you had to do at home to
Okay,
accommodate her and that sort of thing? Because all of that is important. People need to know
in
these things.
initially, when she was first diagnosed, I had some issues with her leaving. She wanted to go, always wanted to go, always wanted to go. So there were times when I used to just leave the door locked because I had this mindset that I would never be in a house with deadbolts on all my doors, because if a fire takes place, I want to be able to go to one door and just unlock it and run out. But after my mom was, I've noticed that she would just unlock the door and go walking. I had to put deadbolts on all my doors. I also, there was a point in my life where um, I worked. I was a primary caregiver, and I couldn't find someone to be there with her 24/7. So my shift started when I got home from work. And in order for me to function the next day at work, I had to find a way to make this thing work. So what I did, lock all the doors downstairs, turn off the gas, and I would go in my room, leave the door open. So if she decides to come upstairs to be with me, fine. But once the doors were locked, I used to fall asleep. I used to sleep so I could at least work the next day. But because she was a walker, she would walk all night. I mean, but one of the things is I couldn't sleep very um, dead. I couldn't get into a dead sleep because I had to check on her. So I used to wake up throughout the night like a parent, and I would have to go and check, make sure she is not hurt, because that was my only thing. Um, After a while, she would trip or fall. I used to have to leave the lights on down and have in the area where her around her room and everything. So actually, I used to have to leave all the lights downstairs on because she would walk. And one time I walked downstairs and she was on the ground, and I was like, "Mommy, what you doing on the ground?" I was so afraid. She made a bed on the ground, so I realized that she was falling. So then I had to be cognizant of her whereabouts. And someone had advocated that I put a camera downstairs so I don't have to be moving up and down all the time to go and check on her. And it's something that I still have to do. But I have experiences of her falling. I have experiences of her walking out the doors, and I had to lock up the whole place. And an incident about her walking. I remember one time I was at work, right? And I left her with somebody, and they did not do what they were supposed to have done. Well, anyway, when the caregiver came by my house, she says, "Dee, I can't find Miss Clark." I say, "You can't find Miss Clark?" Anyway, I went, it so happens that I was in a meeting at work, and when you're in these meetings with your boss, you have your phone off. So I wasn't answering the phone. But anyway, when I did finally answer the phone, um, my my caregiver said, "We can't find Miss Clark." So I went all over the place. My head went from zero to whatever. I had an instant headache. So it so happens that her favorite place is the bank. My mother went from Marshall Road downtown. Her favorite place, and I don't know how she get it. All I know is she had to ride from, and in the beginning of her Alzheimer's, she was an intelligent looking person. I tell you, the people took her from Marshall Road all the way downtown. So that means they thought she was of sound mind. Anyway, she ended up at the bank. The people at the bank who knows her, they called me, and at that point, I happened to answer my phone. And when I answered my phone, they said, "Listen here, Miss Clark down here. We're trying to hold her, but y'all need to hurry up, come." Boy, I dashed straight to the bank. When I got there, they said, "Listen here, we couldn't keep her." Because she was like, "I only want $25, and it's taking you all this time to give me $25." So they gave her $25, and she was carrying on stupid. So they gave her $25 and they left. So anyway, they said, "Deidre, she just leave. She's somewhere downtown." I scoured downtown in must be 5 minutes. And then I said, where would my mommy go? Where would my mommy go? And it was only a couple places. So anyway, going to John is either Coin of the Ram, John Bull, or Coles of Nassau. I run to John Bull, gone to Coles of Nassau. No, gone to Coin of the Ram. So the only other place was Coles of Nassau. When I gone into Coles of Nassau, they said, child, your ma just leave here. Dressing like she going to court, so she must have gone across the road. I can laugh now, right? But that time, that day, if listen here, my I was at the registrar general's department that time. When I got to the office, the people said um, they knew I was looking for her, so they thank God for them, the staff at the registrar general's department too. They saw her and they politely took her to my office and they said, now you don't say nothing to her. I said, listen, all I want to do is shake her. I said, listen, woman, you ain't know what you had me going through right now. But anyway, I found her on that occasion, and that's because she walked. She walked. And that wasn't the only time she's walked before. So I had to get to a point where I always monitor her. I have to know where she is at all time, making sure someone is always with her. So that's how my life changed. I had a child now who I had to know where they were, make sure they were taken care of at all times. So in addition to having to change my life like that, I had to lock up my house. I had to get a caregiver, and what Lord said, crying.
You know,
um,
it's interesting that you talk about wandering, and you all have, because so many of our men now have gone missing.
yes.
Now, the police and those are saying, oh, it's Alzheimer's, and it could as well as it may not. But so many persons now, and in particular men, have gone missing, and they're saying, oh, it's Alzheimer's. You know, and this little island, only 721. And I think 7 men have gone missing
Right. And
since 2020.
Abby, just to follow up on that, that is one of the things that the association is advocating for, because we want to work along with our urban renewal, with our community policing. Because if persons who are within the community, they know, we want to have like the registry where they have the names, and you know who has Alzheimer's or who has a tendency to wander in your neighborhood, in your community. And so that if now you get a report, the police are now able to say, oh, yes, we realize that, and so that they can be on the lookout. So those are some of the types of things that we are trying to see if we could institute and if we can work on and advocate for those persons who are, not only the persons who have the disease, but of course their families as well, to make sure that they remain safe.
And we're not a village anymore, so
No,
Mm,
no.
no,
people
no.
can go walking if they're in some communities. Because I know of a gentleman who walked. He started wandering, and
Mhm.
he would wander at 1 2 a.m. in the mornings. But fortunately, the community
Wow.
that he lived in, the people knew him, because he was a long-standing member of that community. So they would always take him back home, or
Hmm.
try to reach one of his parents. I mean, one of the children.
Children, yeah.
However, that
Fortunate.
is such a major concern and issue today in our community, of men in particular. You don't hear many of the women, but the men in particular who've just
Mm-hmm.
gone missing. And to this day, they don't even know where some of these men are.
It's
You know,
unfortunate. So sad.
yeah,
So
yeah.
unfortunate.
Now, Anita, you guys' lives changed, because I saw some of the changes that took place in your home. Tell us, tell the audience what happened with your mom and what the things you all had to do.
Yep. Well, like I said, I heard Deidre, definitely the locks on the doors, because my mother too was a wanderer. Thank goodness, like I said, it was in the 90s, and I always said, because I heard the stories because I still was away. Um, but in her wandering, there was always someone, like a family member, that would find her. Because I know we had a story, like my sister even said one time she was here while daddy went to church, and she said she was laying on the couch and something just told her get up, and when she
Yeah.
got up she missed my mother, and she started driving on the road and found mommy halfway dressed. Like she just had a slip on and a shirt on. And she was like, "Where are you going?" She was like, "I'm going to church." And so she was trying to follow daddy to church. Another time, I remember he said he dropped her to the hairdresser, and I guess he didn't tell them that she wandered. So when they finished with her hair, they thought that she went outside to her car to drive off. When he came to pick her up, she was gone. But again, at that point, someone had come. One family member found her on the street and called daddy and was able to bring her back home.
One point I want to point out there, and for some of them, they tend to go back to what they know, to their
Yeah.
past, because
Yes.
I remember a patient came into the office, his wife, she was suffering from it, and in 2 minutes she was gone. And she left the office and walked back to Sunlight Village. Now that's where she grew up. So she went back to Sunlight Village, and fortunately they found her there. So a lot of times they tend to go back to what they know.
Right.
And actually, it's that saying, "Once a man, twice a
A
child."
child, yes.
That is exactly what it is, because of course the short-term memory
Correct.
is gone. It's
Hmm.
diminished, and that long-term memory is there,
Still
and
is
so
Still
they are
there.
reverting as if they are like a child again.
Yeah.
And so that is why a lot of people now, they're saying what you would do for persons who are in that stage of dementia. You buy them like dolls and toys like you would buy for a child, because that is what they now can identify with, because these are the things that are in their memory. And so you would buy these things. These are like comfort things and like soft toys, like the stuffed toys, like the teddies, that type of thing, so that they are able now to get then when they get agitated, this is something now that can comfort them. And so they, because that would be something that they associate with, that, oh yes, at a time when they were younger, they would have had maybe a toy that they would have had, and they could have had enjoyment out of that. And so they're advocating for persons to buy these types of things for the individuals who are at that stage.
Yeah.
Now,
And
Anita,
then
yes, continue telling us what took place.
yes. Well, my mother was I would say, the home, a housewife or the home provider. So obviously she did all the cooking, the cleaning, and everything else. So when these things happened, my father was very lost, because he didn't cook, he didn't have to clean. So we had to make provisions to have someone there. I mean, he knew what good food tasted like. So we had to have someone there at the house that could cook and clean, to his liking. We had to we ended up having to buy a lot of things, like rearrange the bathroom, because a lot of times they cannot bathe themselves anymore, so you have to
Mm-hmm.
put actually in the shower, um, a shower seat. You have to elevate the toilet. That's in the early stages. So a lot of these things had to be done in place at towards the end, when mommy was not able to walk anymore. We had to have the wheelchair in place. We also had to end up getting a hospital bed. We had to get a hospital bed. We got a swing that was able to lift her from the bed into the chair. So various things around the house we had to do differently. Um, Working with both of us, like I said, with the housekeeper, with daddy and everything, it because he was already retired, he was able to supervise a lot of the things in the house. And like I said, my sister would come in every day and check up on them. I remember the difficulty what made me in my life change was, I think it was Hurricane Floyd, or one of the hurricanes that came through. And I could not, like, being away, I could not reach anyone. I couldn't reach
Mm.
my sister. I couldn't reach my father. I didn't know what was going on. And I think that made me make a decision that, I probably needed to come home and try and help. Because after that, I think I think, a couple days before, because everything was down. I think all not only electricity, but I think communication, telephones were down, and I was in St. Petersburg. And like I said, after that, I was like, I have to make a decision to try and come. And also, it because I was away, I was seeing the jumps. Like, my sister was here the whole time and saw the slow transition of her changing. Like, one time I would come, she was talking. The next time I come, she couldn't talk. The next time I come, she couldn't walk. So every time I came, there was a big jump in the stage that she was at. So that, at the end, like I said, made me make a decision, along with my husband, to just come home at that time and just be with her. And thank goodness he allowed it, because
Now,
he did not come home. He was not here,
Yeah.
but a year later, he made the decision. He realized, well, initially I had said I was only going for 3 months, and when I got here and saw the state that mommy was in, and knew that a lot of the responsibility was just on another child, my sister, I was like, no, I have to shift. So I had to leave my job in the States and come and work here.
now, as we talk about this, think about it. A lot involves finances. Okay. And then if it's an only child or maybe just two children, a lot of the responsibility is on that particular individual. Now, I remember Anita in those cases, and I think that was the first time I saw that turn or whatever they called it. But if a person is lying in a bed continuously, bed sores and things like that develop. But they had a machine that they were able to rotate their mom on a consistent basis because she was bedridden for more than six years
Yep.
maybe,
Yep.
and to minimize bed sores. But think about it now: if you don't have that, and you have to care for this individual on a daily basis and make sure rotate them and turn them and so on and so forth. So when we think of our country and where we're at, okay, caring for the elderly, and in particular for these persons that have this sort of diseases, Wendy, how is your association going to bring this sort of information to the public to say, listen, these are some real issues and things you need to consider.
You are so right. And, we are working right now on trying to see if we can have a call on our Minister of Health. In the past, we worked with social services, again, trying to bring information forward. Our we had our, just to say we had started our relationship before the change, of course, in government. So we're now working to see if we can build those relationships again because you have different people who are now in place. But we're hoping that we are able now to not only build those relationships so that we can have policy decisions that will really make a change because we know, hey, we know that these things are happening. We know it is going to happen because we know that for our statistics, they say currently worldwide there are over 55 million who are living with dementia. And we also know that most of them who are living with dementia, they are in low and middle income countries. And we know that this number is expected to rise because, of course, you have that aging population. And
People
you
are
have
living
right
longer.
here, right, people are living longer. And so now there has to be in place policies, the healthcare is, they have to change the way in which they would do things and caring for people now because you're going to have more aged persons within your community and who are going to need this type of care. And so these are the types of things we are also trying to see if we can work on, we're advocating for, and so that there can be policies towards having this plan. We know that the Bahamas signed on to the World Health Organization initiative to have a national dementia plan. All the countries who are part of the World Health Organization, they signed on to that. We haven't started on ours as yet, but that's one of the things that we are trying to work for so that we can get a national dementia plan here for the Bahamas so that it is not left on the sidelines. And then when you come and, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Now we have to start planning because we know what the situation is. We know that there's going to be a need, a more urgent need. There's an urgent need now, but even more so within the next 10, 15 years, because persons are going to present themselves with this disease. Um, and we also know that it has, dementia has no regard for your socioeconomic status.
None.
It has no regard for, you know, who you think you are or who you know. It doesn't matter. You are susceptible no matter what station you are in life. And so, therefore, we have to make sure that we have things in place. Persons have to go and get their screenings so that they too can, again, be prepared for what could eventually happen. Because, again, we know once you're prepared, you then know you can put certain things in place. So, that's the fortunate thing about it. Um, it's very rare that it will come on very suddenly, that it's a progressive disease. And so persons are able and the families are able to make plans and to ensure that when certain decisions are made for the betterment of their family members. So we encourage people, of course, to make sure you get that screening, make sure you know what it is that's happening, and then to, again, make those plans. See your lawyer, make sure you have your will in place. Make sure you have put provisions for your care. Have your finances in order, and make sure you have somebody you can trust. They have things where they have the power of attorney, those type of things. And I don't know, Deidre, of course, could speak more to that. But
I'm just going to say, you taking
yeah,
Deidre? Oh, but just before we get to that, we are a society where we don't want to seem to care for our elderly and our aging.
Mm.
Okay, I
but
said
it's
I don't
gonna have to
understand this
happen. Yeah.
Bahamas that we live in because the hospital at one point before COVID was filled with patients who were just dropped off. People, they don't have the patience, they don't have the desire to care for them, so they leave them at the hospital. And these persons were living in the hospital for quite a while,
Yes.
borders. The geriatrics is full.
Full.
A lot of the homes are full. Once they could get them in somewhere, they dump them off and leave them.
Mhm.
Deidre, what forced you, and we're going to get to the legal aspect of it in a minute, but what caused you to say, you know what, this is my mom, I need to take care of her?
Well, I think what forced me to take care of my mom is that I am the eldest daughter and I live in Nassau. My sister lives in Andros. So,
Now, what about the brothers? Because, it seemed like maybe women
listen,
are responsible for these things. A man actually involved in any of this care,
well,
other
well,
than the husband, who has to be
well,
there if it's his wife?
well, he's actually in that case forced to be there, and I say God knows all things, because just before I took care of my mom, I got a divorce. So maybe my husband may not have been sympathetic to what I had to do. So, God put me in a situation where I wouldn't have to worry about what his feelings were. But anyway, I guess because I was the oldest daughter and having a caring personality, my brothers would beg to differ. But anyway, I just thought it was fitting. But you know what happened? When I saw the need to take on my mother, she said she was coming. I couldn't, I was straddling two homes, my home and her home. And it was becoming a bit tiring. So I said, you know what, let me take this woman into my house so that I can rest a little bit. And in her mind, she told all of her friends, listen here, I'm going to stay with my daughter because she needs me in that house. She's in that house by herself. So I'm going to take care of her. And I shared the story. I said, my mommy told me to take care of me. And that made her feel good. And that made me feel even better because guess what? That's how I could had to convince her to come and live in my house. Otherwise, she wasn't leaving her house on Eastern Road. But she had to take care of me, and the mother instinct was there, kicked in right away. I got to make sure my daughter's safe. So anyway, yeah, I took care of her. I decided that it was me. Now my brothers, I will say to you, they my oldest brother, he's a physician. At first, he was a little he couldn't accept that his mother had dementia, but he has now come to terms with her illness. So I think they tend to be fearful initially of not knowing how to deal with the situation, man that is, and so they're less hesitant. But I will say, give credit to my second brother. During the time that my mother, prior to my mother coming to Malta and me experiencing her situation, he was her caregiver. And that's the one she said, listen, I ain't spending no time with you. Call Francis, tell him come pick me up. He was her caregiver. And he did a good job until I took over. I think he must have been happy when I came back to Nassau and started to take care of her. But
Because think about it now, he has to bathe her. He has to,
yes, but at that point
Really?
she was pretty independent. She actually, I think she was still driving. It was during that time that she was beginning to lose some of her memory, because remember, it was when she would go to the mall and drive up and down. He was her caregiver, so I think she took care of him. But you're right, it is a little difficult when it comes to, because at this particular stage in her life, she needs more care. She needs somebody to bathe her. She needs someone to feed her. She needs somebody to take control of her, take her for walks and stuff like that. But when it comes to the hygiene, I think it is a little more difficult for them to deal with. My youngest brother, I will say to you, um, he would initially he had some issues with bathing his mommy, but now I think he has gotten over that, because he'd say, I just finished bed. Like if I have to do something and she's spending the weekend by him, he'd say, oh, I just finished bed, mommy, and feeding her. You understand me? But initially he had a problem with it. Um, but now I think they're accepting of the fact that she ain't concerned about her nakedness in the front of them. So they need to accept that um, this is the reality of her life. And
oh, Deidre got cut
She
off.
got off, yeah.
Hopefully she will come back in.
Okay, yeah.
Now, Anita, your dad was the overseer in the house, but there was a caregiver there along with your two sisters. So he never really had to like do the physical aspect of it. He just overseed.
Yes.
And there were no men around to be involved. Did it
Yeah.
take its toll on you and your sister?
I think more so my sister than me, because like I said, she had the full blunt of, like I said, the mummy lasted. Mummy was diagnosed, between the diagnosis and her demise, it was about 12 years. So the first, like I said, the first, I would say almost 8 years, my sister had to handle that. So it was a strain. So not until I came home and I saw the strain on her. Even, I mean, well, like I said, my dad, it was very, very difficult, because I actually ended up becoming, because obviously there was no association in the Bahamas, but I lived in Florida and I worked at Bascom Palmer, and I joined an association there, because like I said, for me it was new to me, and I got information from the association, pamphlets, brochures, books, and I was the one that when I came home, or even on my trips, was able to kind of explain to daddy what it was about, because for him it was, he couldn't understand how mommy could forget to cook or could forget to do something. It was like, and then he would try to teach her like you would teach a child. So it was like, okay, well, you do this, not realizing the scenario of the disease. So it's like, I don't understand. She can't even learn. She can't understand. And it has nothing to do with her learning. It is almost like, I mean, how I when I started the Alzheimer's Association, they said it's almost like the brain starts to unravel from the beginning all the way to the end. So like the first thing as a baby, first thing you learn to do is to talk, and then you learn to walk, and then you develop all your more um, I guess, higher learning skills. Um, and Alzheimer's unwinds from that higher level. So for my mother, like being able to play the piano was gone. Then, I mean, the last, like I said, actually, the first thing you do is breathe. So it unwinds from the higher learning all the way down to like they forget to walk. Then the next thing is they forget to talk. Then the breathing. So it's like almost like you're going
Back to a baby.
a
Once a
baby.
man, twice a child.
Yes, exactly. So it was difficult for my father to understand those things. Like it was really, it took him a while. I don't even know if he ever really understood. He accepted it, but it took him a while to realize that, okay, this is not mommy, this is not the wife that I married. This is now somebody that I have to take care of. So
And that's the thing with it. We always think we're going to be the same as we mature in age, but many persons are affected by this debilitating disease, and then the person you once knew who was very active, Deidre's mom was a deputy director, and a lot of these people were people who were high level functioning people in society, and now you see them, they can't even communicate at times. So all these skills they've lost.
yeah.
And so that is why we as a society, we need to be more sensitive and compassionate towards each other. Because for me, I'm like, Lord, just keep a mind, because I can get to that point because Alzheimer's is in my family. I've had an uncle who lived 15 years bedridden with it. Okay. Another uncle, two uncles who passed from it, and it started very early with them in their 70s. So it probably would have started even before that, but at least by that point they were diagnosed. And so we have to become more sensitive as a society towards elderly and towards persons who are aging. Now, Deidre, let's go into the legal aspect of it. As a lawyer, what do you advise families and persons who suspect their loved ones may be being challenged with it? And then what do you say to the individual who's challenged? Because most parents we know want to stay in control of their assets, their finances, their homes, and all of these different things. And now you're being challenged with memory, lapses, and all of that. What advice do you give?
Well, thank you. That's a good question, and that's a question that the association has tried to answer every time we have a workshop. And one of the things that I advocate is if you are able to have a power of attorney put in place. Now, you can, one of the things I want persons to know that if the person is severely incapacitated or and can't function, because sometimes you have people who are going through dementia, they have lucid moments. And as long as their doctors can say, well, this is a lucid moment, that they're not so bad that they can't enter into a power of attorney. I would suggest you try to get one where you appoint somebody, and more specifically, an enduring power of attorney where you appoint somebody to take care of you during your incapacity. Now, in order for you to enter into a power of attorney, you have to have mental capacity. That's one of the things. You can't be bad off and have these people, because I would tell you, my mother could sign her signature. One thing she knew how to sign that signature, but she couldn't tell you where she was. So you can have a person like that enter into, well, give you power of attorney over them if they are not mentally capable of doing so.
Now, do you have to get a letter from their doctor stating
Yes.
this, or?
You would have to have a letter stating that this person has the mental capacity to issue their power of attorney. That was one of the things we got for my mother. But listen, I can tell you that still ain't stop people from suggesting that they will challenge it. Um, but as long as you have that letter, I think you should be in good stead to say, listen here, this person was capable of entering or giving power of attorney to another person. Now, now that has to be filed and all those good things. And I would suggest you go to an attorney's so that you cover all your bases, make sure that it is done properly and everything is in order. But one of the things too, you find people have, and this is something we're pushing, you have people who are lacking or who eventually will lack capacity. And I'm encouraging everybody, when you have, if you have a bank, or even when you have your common sense, you can do certain things, you have your bank account, make sure you have another person on your bank account in the event that you do find yourself in a situation where you can't help yourself. At least
Please
someone
say
is
that
able
again.
to.
Please say that again so people can understand the importance of that, because we don't realize all that's involved when you're the only person on that account and
Yeah.
something happens to you, and it does not even have to be Alzheimer's.
No, it could just be you could have injured yourself and can't get to the bank. You understand me? You have to you're in a hospital and the person have to use their funds to take care of you because you can't get to the bank. You're in a coma or whatever the deal is. So I'm advocating that persons add a second signature to their bank account. And guess what? Even if you die, you may have a couple of dollars in your bank account and no one can access that money until your estate is probated. And to me, that may be the only asset you have in this whole world. You understand me? So I have to go to spending all that money, all that time just to get a little couple of dollars you have in your bank account. No. So, and we find a lot of people find themselves in those situations. So we advocate, that's another thing I would advocate, that you put someone on your signatory, on your bank account. I just put my nephew, I don't have any children. So I was like, I was on my mommy's zone from years gone by. See, my mom had vision. I tell you, when she realized that, I don't know who she spoke to, but she went to the bank and put me on a bank account. And so now I have access, and I don't have to go to no court to get access to her monies. So I'm able to take care of her when she's unable to take care of herself. We talked about finances. So you have to have the person who's going to be your caregiver has to have access to your money, because it's not always that you're going to be able to find people out there to assist you. I thank God my father helps me with my mother, but that's the reality is, her money I have access to, so I can help take care of her. We talked about the power of attorney. Now, another thing too, you mentioned that these your parents will hold on to things until they die. One of the things I advocate is, if you know you're getting old, give your children their estate. My father always used to say, listen here, whatever I have is for my children. But since say for your children, why you anyway?
Deidre, you can get blasted after the show tonight. Yeah, you.
I know.
No, but
I
that is
know.
reality. These are conversations that need to be had. Now, we know in our society you got some children who only looking for what you got.
Right.
But parents have to be realistic in terms of who they know they can
We'll take
depend
care of
on
them, yeah.
or trust.
Mm-hmm.
At some point you have to get to that point in making that decision, because yes, it takes more time and you can spend more money if something would happen to you and they have to use the courts to be able to access
Your funds
properties, your
and your
state,
property.
whatever. So it makes sense while you're alive and living to say, well, in the event something would have happened to me, this person is able to carry out my wishes or assist or do the necessary things that are needed. But the generation, our parents, they're from that school of thought where they've worked hard and they've acquired stuff, and so they're gonna hold on to it until they die, and then when they die, your children can, but it takes so long for probate, as you said, and to figure out this and then the next. And it can be easier if you just say, I'm designating this, that, the next, and I know, but that's another time and show.
Well, let
Okay.
me say something too. I go back to my mother again because it's like, even though she may have been going through whatever she was going through, she was a visionary. Listen, every piece of asset that woman has in her name, she's given it to whomever she wants to have. She's given me property already. She's given my sister property already. She's given my brother his property. Oh, she gave out everything. So and it accords with what's in her will. But the bottom line is, she's not holding on to these things, and it's so appropriate because other than the will, at least she's letting me know that, this is what I want for you, and she's actually giving you a head start as well. It helps your children advance, and so they can do whatever they wish to do, if they wish to do anything, that is.
Now, two stories I heard concerning Alzheimer's. One, my brother, he would always tell us about it, and he would preach about this. A couple, a husband and wife, they were so cantankerous against each other that they ended up getting a divorce and ended up being in the same nursing home, and they both had Alzheimer's, and they fell in love again and didn't know each
This
other
in the Bahamas.
and remarried. Okay, so okay, listen, these things could happen. Okay, they remarried. They didn't know they didn't even know each other. All right, and then I read a book on this is the youngest person that I heard of that got Alzheimer's, and he got it in his 30s. And this was a rare case. A young man, he was married, had 4 children, and the wife said, she noticed as time went on, because he started in his early 30s. She would leave the children home, and when she came back, they dressed the same and looked the same. And she was like, something just ain't right, And as time went on, then she realized he forgot and his behavior. And eventually she realized he had Alzheimer's, and he died at about age 37 with the disease. And, she said how much it affected and impacted her life. So there are cases of individuals who have started even earlier in life. Statistics say the longer you live, the chances of development, but you have cases where it's starting even earlier for some. Now, somebody asked a question, if any of you know of any relapse or reversal, I should say, of the disease with anybody. I don't know.
No.
Because, see, when brain cells start to diminish and die, nerve cells do not regenerate.
No.
I think it's more of a slowing down of it. If
Mhm.
you have certain medication, those types
Right.
of things, it may be slowing down. But there's no today there is no cure
As far as
for
we know, and
as
no
we
one
know.
who has had any
Yeah.
sort of reversal. But it's so important, though. Anita, what would you say to persons if somebody come and ask you, well, tell me something. I am not sure of my parents, what's going on with them. What are some of the things you would tell them to pay attention to or to look for?
Um, like I said, at the initial stages, a lot of times when a person is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, they've already gone through some of the beginning stages. A lot of times it's you really don't start noticing things unless like I think the short-term memory is one of the things that you would, or even forgetting things. But again, those could be signs of Alzheimer's. I mean, like I said, years ago people just thought it was senility. But if you I know a lot of times as we get older, we do forget. Like you walk into a room now, and I'll be like,
Oh
wait a
Lord, it
second.
gets frightening. I stop hiding things from myself because listen, I don't hide stuff no more because boy, frightening
So,
thought.
Listen, yeah, I tell them, listen, yeah, over 50.
I'm not to the point where I put things methodically there because I put
yeah,
it in. Lord
yeah.
help me, I don't remember. So I
So I mean, I guess the same thing what Wendy was saying was, I guess if you start noticing these, like forgetting, um, short-term memory, you're missing things, you forget where you put, jewelry or whatever. Um, those are the times just to get screened. to get checked.
And don't tell me that boy neither. Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. I'm sorry.
And
And
also if there's family history, because like I
Yeah,
said, for
yeah.
my mother,
No.
we did not know, but then I realized afterwards, years afterwards, like mommy was probably the first one that I knew of. But then afterwards, we found out, okay, well, this person had it or this person, but it wasn't diagnosed as Alzheimer's. So if you know that you have a family history of it, yeah, and I think they have tests. I know, yeah, they do have tests for
yeah,
Alzheimer's.
this Wendy, what's the name of that test that Dr. Teresa Clark was the
I
supposed to
know
be
it's
having?
some cognitive
Yeah.
screening. I can't remember the exact name, and I have to get in contact with her just to follow up because we had as part of our association first year celebration. Dr. Clark was going to come and do some. She's a Bahamian, but she's living in the States. Does research doctor, and actually one of her areas is Alzheimer's research. And so she was going to come and do, as part of her research, do some screening for us. Unfortunately, she had one of her patients who had COVID, and so she was compromised, and she was not able to come. But she said she was hoping to come before the end of the year. So y'all keep a lookout, and we'll make sure that we publicize when she'll be coming in to do those screenings.
And
Now,
also, I was
Anita. Mm-hmm.
I was saying, and also people also need to know that in reality, Alzheimer's cannot be diagnosed until death. Truly,
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, when they do the
autopsy.
autopsy.
Top C, yes,
Mhm,
because that's when
mhm.
they would see the plaques and the things.
Right,
correct,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
correct,
So that's when
correct.
you get the definitive result. Yes, this is
The
it.
definitive, exactly,
Mhm.
Mhm.
exactly.
That's
So,
interesting. I didn't know that
Yeah,
piece.
right,
so we could be assuming it all along, but
Hmm.
right. There could be
now
other.
I also know of two persons, and boy, I tell you, I say life is something. These were strong, committed people, and going through Alzheimer's, they went back to their, I guess, their previous lives, and their language became so
Ah,
distasteful and disgusting. You could not believe these were once upstanding Bahamians
And
in our
you
society.
talk about that and some of the changes that happen in your home, because that happened to my father-in-law. And you always had to cringe because the what they say, the language of the sailor that he was
hmm.
using, and the children were
Mhm.
there, and we had a caregiver, and somebody was saying, she was like, he shouldn't be saying that in front of the children. And you had to explain to the kids that that's not really grandpa, it's the disease more so. And grandpa still loves you, even though he's saying these, using this strong language against you and calling you all these kind of names. So those are some of the types of things I think families have to also be aware of. And especially if you have children who are in the household, and the person is living there in the household with you, that children need to also um, have that. You have to talk to the kids and let them know, and also have them as part of taken care of, not to the full extent, but if they could always bring a glass of water, they could always sit down and talk to grandpa if he's able to find out, because they love to talk about the old time, what happened way back then, because that is what is in their memory. So have them come and maybe just assist a little bit, so that they can be a part of it's in the family, and you can reduce that stigma. That is one of the things as well. We want to reduce that stigma, or eliminate the stigma altogether associated with dementia and Alzheimer's.
And see, somebody asks, is there a difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? And it's a form of dementia.
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 Yeah. There are
Hmm.
different
Hmm.
types of dementia, but that is one of the
Right.
major.
That's the most common. That's the most
Common. Yeah,
common. Yeah.
Alzheimer's is the most
Right.
common cause
Mhm.
of dementia. Yeah.
Now, as we begin to wrap up, ladies, I'll start with you, Deidre. What do you want to say to the audience and to the folks who may be listening concerning the disease and what you were doing as a caregiver?
Um, uh, um, what I'd like to say as a caregiver to be patient, to allow your young people to be involved with your 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 patient or the person that has the dementia. Because I know with my mom, she loves being around children. Her grandchildren are her pride and joy. So when they're around, she may not be able to say, um, call them by name, Frankie, Azari, or whatever. But just the mere fact of them being around. I have a nephew who's like 1 or 2, right? And if he gets near her, the first thing she's doing is reaching out to touch him. So they love being around children. So be patient, allow your young people to come and spend time with your dementia patient. And I think I already said be patient. Be patient, bring the younger people around, and don't lock them up. Don't lock them away. I think a lot of people tend to keep them home.
Mm-hmm.
Listen here, every opportunity I get,
Come on,
my
boy.
mom inside my car. People, when they see me, they see her. They say, "Oh, so where Miss Clark is?" If they see me without my mommy, they're like, "So where Miss Clark
What
is?
happened?
What happened?" You understand me? So I think we need
Mhm.
to take them out, even if they're not aware. Just take them out. Just let them feel like they out. Now, every time I go back home, my mommy don't want to go back in the house, right? But and it's always the challenge. But let them bring them out. Let them experience life. They're still alive down there somewhere.
Exactly.
They just don't know how to communicate with us, but they're still there. So make them feel alive as much as you possibly can.
Anita, as you look back, Dr. Dane, what what comes to you, and what would advice would you give going forward?
The same thing. Just make sure that you treat them humanly. Make sure that you engage them. Because, like I said, looking back, that's one of the things that we did do was talk to mommy. Like, I mean, even though we knew that she wasn't going to respond, but let her know what was going on. So she knew what was going on in our lives. She knew what was going on in the Bahamas, around the world, whatever, at church. So we came, we they always say never talk about them in front of them. So that's
Mm.
key. You don't act as if they're not there, because they are still aware. Like I said, their spirit is still inside. They are still aware of what's going on. It's just that they can't relate. So you don't know how much of what you're saying is. I mean, they're understanding, but they just can't come back and tell you that they're understanding.
And I
Um,
suppose affection is so very important. Also,
Oh, yeah.
touch,
yes, the
touch.
touch and everything else, and like I say, allow them to still feel like they're part of the family,
Mm-hmm.
that they're even though they're there, that we're still around. Because I remembered, even like my children. I mean, my mother was still able to see all of her grandchildren. My sister has 2 children, and I have 2. And I remember when she first, well, Tati is the oldest grandchild. But I remember my sister telling me that when she was able to walk, she would walk around looking at Tati and thinking Tati was my sister. So she would be
Oh.
calling Tati, she would be calling Tati, Erica, 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 and Tati would
Mm.
like, why is Grammy calling me? But again, we say they go back in time. So she thought that was her little daughter. And then when my children came around, I remember my son would go in the hospital bed, and that was his Bammy. He was like, Bammy, 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 and he would be poking her in the eyes, just like how little babies do. But you could see, like I said, that little smile. If she couldn't smile, you could see the little the light come up in her eyes, just to know that that was her grandson. And I mean, even my daughter, like, she always used to go and say, Grammy's gonna walk. I'm praying that I see Grammy walk, and she never saw Grammy walk. Grammy was in bed at the time. But she always still had her grandchildren around. We celebrate, like, I think that year when I came home after Floyd, the 70th birthday, we were around to celebrating and saying, Mommy, you've reached 70, happy birthday.
Mhm.
All of us were there. So those are the things. Continue to keep them involved. Continue to Allow them to feel like, even though I think even at some point my mother knew things were happening, because I remembered a couple times when she was able to talk, saying, "Man, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I keep forgetting things." So they are aware that
Right.
things are happening to them, but they can't. There's nothing they can do. And I would say, "Mommy, it's okay. It's okay." And then even like I think Deidre was saying about the nakedness, like I remember a couple times when we had to, bathe her, she would be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like she knew she still had a pride that she knew, oh my goodness, you all have to do this for me. But like I said, just the patience is there. You have to, and then also read, read up on it, be more aware of how the disease I think that's what we need in our
Yeah.
society,
Education.
more
Education.
education and
Yeah.
awareness of what's going on, because I think people don't understand. And we, as human beings, when things are different or people are different, we tend to move away, or like you don't want to be a part of
Isolate.
it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
So
that's that stigma there, trying to
exactly.
put that in.
Two
Exactly.
comments here, and then I will have Wendy kind of wrap up. One person said, when you take them out and if others look at them strange, just let them know the person has dementia. This will also bring awareness to the disease. And someone said, to
Yes.
take them out on drives, it helps. They
Yes.
like to they like to go
To
in
get
cars
out,
and
to
ride
be
about,
out, be
you
out.
know.
And
And
music,
sometimes in
music
the
too. No, I
in
was saying music.
where
They
Music.
love
yes,
music, and
music and
music.
dancing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
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 And in the early stages too of dementia, persons they would still know what is happening. They still have that a little bit of cognitive ability,
Yeah.
and so they are able to make decisions for themselves. And I think that's one of the things too that family members need to be aware of. That let them know, tell them what's happening, let them know what's going on, and let them make certain decisions for themselves. But
Wendy,
one of
what
the
would you say to our
I would
group
say
and wrapping
too,
up?
I agree fully with everything both Deidre and Anita have said too. But I also want to encourage those persons who are caregivers to care for yourself. Because
Uh,
as they say, you
True.
cannot give anything if your cup is empty. So
Amen.
you have to make sure to take a time to refill and to get yourself back so that you are now able to give again. So take some time off, even if you have to just say, hey, I have to go away, call somebody in, get somebody to come and assist. If you are the caregiver, especially if you're the primary caregiver, you're going to need to have a break at some point in time. And so, put that in your schedule as well. Because if you don't, they even say now that sometimes it's the caregivers who go before the people
Yeah.
who are the
Yeah.
dementia because they're so stressed out and they're working so much. They pass away, and here it is, the person who has the Alzheimer's or who has the dementia, they're still there. But
and
because they've been stressing out and they've not taken time to take care of themselves.
That's
So
true.
that is one of the things I would encourage. If you're a caregiver,
one thing
take
I
care of
wanted to
yourself.
point out also is that some families, I know of certain situations where some families could afford, but they could not continue to keep their parents home caring for them. So they have paid for care at a home,
Right.
that because they realized they could not continue any longer in their home. So that is an option for some people if they have the finances to do it. But in a lot of cases, that is not the option.
Mm-hmm.
And that responsibility is on the household. And depending on what's going on,
Yeah.
oh, people can make some poor decisions. So we really, want to say to our society, look, these are the people who sacrificed to bring you and cause you to be where you are today. Do not neglect them.
No.
Do not neglect them. And for your association, Wendy, how can people get in contact with the association when you meet? Those sorts of things. Give that information out.
We do have a phone number. We have it's 828-6774, 828-6774. We have a Facebook page. We have a Bahamas Alzheimer's Association.com, all one word, Bahamas Alzheimer's Association.com, and then www.bahamasalzheimersassociation.org, Bahamas Alzheimer's Association.org for our webpage. And so you're able to get in contact with us through any of those means.
And if there is any information you need, please feel free to call upon them or somebody to get information. Know that it takes a village. We're all in this together. Nobody is immune. You don't know when your time is coming or your loved one. So let's become more compassionate people. As we look around in our society and we see some of the things that are happening now, we have to like say, Lord, what is going on in our country? You know, but it still requires us as individuals to become a village again. You know, get to know people, get to help. A lot of times, so you see elderly people on the streets begging, and you really have to kind of like
Yeah,
weigh
you
the
want to.
situation, because you know some people out there taking advantage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but when we see them, let's find out about them, maybe help as best we can, and let's become more involved in the lives of our elderly people. They need us. We will get there one day, if we live long enough. So, very important. But thank you, ladies,
Thank you so much. Thank you for
for
having me.
sharing and giving us the information and feedback. A lot of people are quite pleased with whatever help and information is given this evening. I want to say thank you to those folks who've watched the show continuously each month. This is the end of this series for this year. And this show only started for 4 weeks, and now it's gone on for 2 years. So we'll see what happens as it continues. But I want to say thank you to all the folks who've come on and share their experiences and their stories. So much to talk about in our community. So many things we need to talk. And I think education is the main key. When we
Yeah.
educate people, they're better informed and they can make better and proper decisions. This show was brought to you by Palmdale Vision Center. I want to thank my special guests, Ms. Deidre Clark, Dr. Nita Brown Dane, Ms. Wendy Poitier Aubrey, for being on, talking about Alzheimer's. And yes, people, go and read, educate yourself, Google it, just get information, and let's try to be a more informed, educated society. I want to say thank you to all who helped to make this show possible, in particular my husband, Theodore Sr. and Theodore Jr., my technical person. Thank you all, and for others, Mr. Adderley, who helped me this evening, and those who've contributed to the success of the show. Thank you, Bahamas. Thank you to the world, and good evening. Ladies, don't leave yet. Let me just end the broadcast.